Hello and welcome to The More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. Hello, I'm Kevin Kelton, a TV writer, political activist, and a lifetime Democrat living in Los Angeles, California.
I'm Cliff Dunn, a Republican unit chair who has been without an ideological home for most of his adult life.
I'm Greg Matuzak, a liberal Democrat who is a veteran of several hard-fought, mostly losing, political campaigns.
From?
Cincinnati, Ohio. How could I forget?
Hello, I'm Molly Malloy Cooper, a senior lecturer of economics at The Ohio State University and free market conservative from Columbus, Ohio.
And I'm DJ McGuire, an adjunct instructor in economics from Suffolk, Virginia, and I feel like I've been thrown around the political spectrum like a Martian naval combat officer, dropping into maneuvers from a 3G burn without a crash couch.
And with over 600,000 downloads to date, The More Perfect Union is one of the hottest and hopefully funniest political podcasts on iTunes. The More Perfect Union can also be found on YouTube, Facebook, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can also find host bios and commentary.
From some of us, the rest of you are lazy slobs.
Yes, exactly. And DJ and I want to take this time to really beat up on everybody who hasn't posted there yet. So this week, we found out that there are indeed no White House tape recordings that the president knows of. But does that mean that there could be some that he doesn't know of? But he was so insightful and foreseeing of the future that he could predict that they existed even though he didn't know they existed?
Or is he hoping that there aren't tapes now?
Is that foresight, or does he just watch too much Scandal?
Well, of course, it's pretty obvious that he was bluffing the whole time. I'm amazed that people are now kind of repackaging this as how brilliant it was of him. He scared Comey into saying the truth. What Comey said made the president's life 15 times worse because it led to a special prosecutor. So that little tweet may have undone his presidency. It was possibly the stupidest thing any president has ever done.
And if I may ask, when is it okay to acknowledge intimidating a witness if you're boasting about it? Like if you thump your chest enough time, that makes it okay? I'm confused.
You mean intimidating the witness into telling the truth? I mean, I don't know that you're going to,
I think that's usually what opposing counsel is for.
Alan Dershowitz bragged on CNN this week. He said, if you're criticizing the president about lying to motivate a witness to tell the truth, then you're also calling me a liar and you're calling Abraham Lincoln a liar. And then he went on to cite some case that Abraham Lincoln apparently, tricked somebody into telling the truth by telling them that there was something he knew that they didn't know. And then Dershowitz went on to cite a case of his own where he lied to a witness about the existence of a tape recording, and that witness apparently broke down and told the truth. And Dershowitz feels that because two attorneys did that in trials, that means it's okay for the president of the United States to do that to the former FBI director.
And that's exactly it. If you're in a courtroom, it is a smart legal move. If you are a potential defendant in an investigation, it is something else entirely. And I'm not saying this is going to be what gets Trump impeached. I don't think Trump's going to get impeached. But what I'm saying is it is very, very different from what a lawyer might do. It is very, very different from what a lawyer might do to coax a witness.
DJ is absolutely correct. Like, you see this all the time on the TV shows where the defense attorney goes, ladies and gentlemen, right now, the dead wife is going to walk right through the doors. And everyone looks and they go, did you see? She didn't walk in, but you thought she was going to, and that's reasonable doubt. See? And that's exactly what he did. He was like, that's reasonable doubt. But did he lie? Yeah, of course he lied. But once again, like he said, this isn't a courtroom. And once again, Trump has shown that he has no honor, capacity for truth, that he has, you guys can fill in the blank. It's a Mad Lib for Trump at this point.
Well,
what does Trump not have?
The The critics have had their say, so it's time for Cliff and Molly to have their say.
Well, it looks like the Republican response to this is, he's Columbo! That is literally what I'm hearing from y'all, that the response is, from all around is, well, okay, he bluffed around, so this is like every episode of Columbo, and I feel like we're going to have some press conference in one of these days, someday soon, where he just turns around and says, oh, and one more thing.
Yeah, and he's wearing a raincoat.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'm defending him as much. Well, first of all, I do want to say that anyone who says that Abe Lincoln had tapes is lying. And then,
I'll check his Twitter account. I'll double check his Twitter account.
And secondly, I don't know that this is what set up the special prosecutor. I think that ball was already rolling way downhill. So, I'm not, in terms of whether he shot himself in the foot doing that. I don't know, but I think it goes with a lot of what Trump does. He's just not serious. He just says things that are just off the wall.
Speaking of off the wall, there's something that the president said this week that I found so preposterous that it's actually funny to me, and very little of what he says is funny. But he was making a speech someplace, and he claimed that he's going to add solar panels to the Mexican wall.
Yes, that was in Iowa.
No, this is,
by the way.
This is literally off the wall.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we can sit here and try to make sense of it, but the reality is that he's not serious. He's just saying that to tweak Democrats, to try to get them on the defensive, because if they're against the wall, then they're against solar power.
Yep.
So it's just a little thing that he likes to do to annoy people. But here's the thing. Should the president of the United States be doing that? I know people say he's a different kind of president. It's refreshing. He's not like all the others. But do you really want a president who just goes around irking people and trying to make them uncomfortable and lying about the existence of tapes? Is that what we want?
Let's go back to your first point.
That was about 30 minutes ago.
Your first point about him saying this and irking, it drove me nuts. I mean, this was like putting me in a round room and saying, go sit in the corner, because I sat there with this ethical dilemma. I am so torn, but I'm for solar power, but I'm against the wall, but I'm for solar power. And I sat there and my family had to say, go sit down, think about this. And then finally, it's not going to happen. You're right, but I'm for solar power. This was terrible.
Greg, didn't you once mention that your dad was in that industry?
He was. My father sold solar panels in the 70s. And, he was one of the pioneers. And I don't even think he believed in it. This was back when you could maybe heat your pool with it. But,
I was about to say, was this to run a calculator that, could do the four major operations?
But I remember this was a big thing back then. And
now he's a Trump supporter, so he must be in Hog's heaven.
He's in Hog's heaven. Oh, he's a huge Trump supporter. So I haven't asked him about it. I should have asked him tonight. But this goes against his EPA director and the coal resurgence. And yet I know this will never happen. And yet I'm still.
No, he was totally yanking your chain, Greg. But
and he had you in mind personally, Greg. It was directly aimed at you.
I know, and I just need to be hugged and told this constantly.
But can we just talk about the physics of it for a second?
Let's talk about the physics of the second, which I think is actually brilliant, though I do not think it was Trump's strategy. That then this spawns a whole bunch of ink about how infeasible and how expensive solar is. Thank you.
It is just another reminder that there is not a dime's worth of difference between the two major parties. Both Obama and Trump are now looking to bail out Solyndra, just in different ways. It's sad.
Well, first of all, with inflation, I think we should now call it $1 worth of difference. I don't think a dime's worth of difference.
Yeah, dimes. I'll give you a dime right there.
But here's the thing. I want to talk about this for a second because it's so absurd. So we all know what solar panels look like, okay? To put solar panels on top of a wall, because you can't put them on the side, that would only get sunlight for 12 hours of a day. So to put them on the top of a wall, you'd have to build the wall about 3 feet to 4 feet wide.
Wait. How can
12
how can
hours?
solar power? How can solar panels get the sun 24 hours a day when it's not in the sky 24 hours?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Confused here.
Okay, so 6 hours a day on each side.
6
He's going
hours.
to build the wall in Norway, and for 6 months out of the year.
So,
be
but wait,
great.
I just want to talk this through because I think it's so funny. So let's say, because you can't build the wall that's going to be 4 feet thick. That triples the cost. So let's say that it's a regular cinder block wall with some adornment on the face because it's Donald Trump. And let's say these things are on top like a T, right? They're hanging off on each side like a T. You know what the Mexicans are going to do?
Grappling hooks.
No. They're going to come with rocks and start throwing them at the glass panels. I mean,
No, they're going to come with grappling. No, as Cliff said, they're going to come with grappling hooks, and they're going to use the solar panels
To catch
go
on?
over the freaking.
so you have to have solar panels with barbed wire on top
No,
of them.
I heard somebody being very serious, and I'm not sure that they're actually knowledgeable, but they were very serious in the claim that these panels will get so hot and so in heat that nobody will be able to touch the wall. It will radiate heat and in itself become a barrier.
Wow.
I'm sure that's how it works, right?
Oh my gosh.
Wait, Molly, did you just say a solar panel in heat? Will it actually jump off the wall and look to mate somewhere?
Yeah, it'll try and mate with a wind turbine, DJ.
Oh, they can. Why limit it to solar panels? You can put the wind turbines there too. I mean, those
That's
are
true.
very yes. That will definitely, because you'll get your head chopped off.
Right,
if you try to
exactly.
scale that wall.
Nobody's going to be climbing over those wind turbines.
You know, and now I am just imagining, we put wind turbines on there, we put solar panels on there, and now it is that horrible level from that video game we all remember from elementary, middle school, or when we were younger. Maybe we could randomly throw some macros in there as well. It'll be an episode of Star Trek.
So, speaking of hot topics, what about the Georgia 6th? They had an election this week. And, DJ, by the way, congratulations on extending your streak. I meant to tell you that
Yeah, I know.
online.
yeah.
I've known DJ now for about 3 years. I haven't heard him call a single election right.
My streak is actually 20 years old.
Oh my god.
I have got since the Canadian election of 1997. I have gotten it wrong just about.
Wait, you thought John McCain was going to win in 2008?
Not really.
Okay.
No, that quote prediction unquote was more shilling in the triumph of hope over experience.
So what did this election mean? Okay, so the Democrats and the Republicans plowed, almost $50 million into a congressional election, which by far exceeded, all records of money going into congressional campaigns. Nothing changed. And now everybody's saying, is it a win for the Democrats because they came close, or does it just show that no matter what Democrats do, the odds of flipping the House in 2018 are a long shot at best?
I think it's a win for the Republicans for one simple reason, and that is that they just got the Democrats to spend $30 million on a race which would not substantively change the makeup of the House in the vague hope of derailing some legislation or, quote unquote, sending a message. They wasted $20 million of those dollars. And that's money,
Right.
that is no less wasteful than the recall fiasco in Wisconsin all those years ago.
I don't like to read too much into this because I know they want it to be a referendum on Trump, but it's really there's so much noise that goes into it, including the candidates themselves and whether they're likable, whether it's appropriate to have a candidate who can't vote for himself because he lives outside the district. But what I find interesting is the amount of money, as from an economist point of view, is the money spent and how with social media and other things that I'm beginning to think between this election and the presidential election in 2016 that money does not matter nearly as much as it once did.
Yeah, I agree, but you know what? I have family down in Atlanta, and they live just outside of this district, and they told me he wasn't going to win. They knew. They said he was a carpetbagger. They knew that he didn't live there. But additionally, I think we do have to think about the fact that the predecessor won that district by 23 points. And he lost
Something like
yeah,
that.
and he lost it only by a couple. It was a much, much closer race. Does that mean something? Yeah, we all know. Anyone who's ever worked on a campaign knows that means a lot. Does that mean something in 2018? Yeah, it means a lot more people are paying attention. It means Democrats are going to be energized. It means Democrats are going to be voting. And it means a lot of swing voters are going to be out voting. So people are more politically aware, and if you get the right candidates, and we've talked about whether Hillary was the right candidate, whether Trump was the right candidate, this guy was not the right candidate, and they hammered home that he couldn't even vote. He was living on his girlfriend's couch.
Well, they were probably in the same bed, but come on.
Either way, this guy wasn't going to win.
Let's not create a rumor of domestic disharmony there either.
Either way, if the Democrats can get good candidates, and that's a giant if, because Lord knows they've been trying to get good candidates for how long have you been wrong now, DJ? 20 years? 20 years. Then they can win. They can take back the House. They can take back the Senate. They can take back the night. They can take back everything.
Well, I think when you compare, when you look at Georgia 6 and combine it with South Carolina 5, which was not given nearly as much attention,
right,
and yet a very similar swing compared to the 2016 congressional election also occurred there. Democrats actually ran a former Goldman Sachs banker who actually came closer to victory than Ossoff did in Georgia 6. I think it portends very well for Democrats in 2018. I'm not sure what it means for Democrats in 2020, because what it showed us was that Ossoff's vote in Georgia 6 was very close to Hillary Clinton's vote last year there. There was about, Mrs. Clinton won about 47%, Ossoff won about 48%. Gary Johnson won about 4 or 5% in that district. And if this election tells us anything, it's that the Gary Johnson vote is not willing to cross over to the Democrats. They still prefer Republicans to Democrats, and Democrats need to see to that, because Gary Johnson voters held the balance, not just in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, but also in Florida, also in Arizona, and very nearly in North Carolina. Gary Johnson voters are where, in my opinion, that's the promised land for Democrats. If they can get those voters to support their candidates in 2018 and their presidential candidate in 2020, they can actually build a workable majority. What Georgia 6 showed us was that the Democrats have not been able to do that yet. They need to address them with policies that can win those voters over.
So what would you say are the two issues that Democrats can use that would be a fit for Democrats that might attract those libertarian voters?
I would say one, I think Democrats should push harder on freer trade, because I think with a number of their core voters it actually works very well. With some it doesn't, I'll acknowledge that. But they can also take a look at what Republicans are offering and simply tweak them to reflect Democratic values. I've mentioned this on tax reform over and over again, and I'll do it now. Republicans are desperate to try to come up with some sort of tax reform, and they're using a hideous border adjustment tax to make up the revenue for the tax cuts on the other side. All Democrats have to do is say, you know what, we'd rather do a carbon consumption tax instead of a border adjustment tax, and we might be willing to support that. That opens up the party to tax reformers on the Republican side who say, oh, wait a minute, Democrats are actually willing to embrace tax reform. And at the same time, it wins over a number of Sanders voters who prefer a carbon tax to an emissions trading scheme, because emissions trading schemes are terrible. And so it actually helped the Democrats both with their base and with crossover voters. They can do things like a switch position on the Export-Import Bank, which is simply the Bank of Boeing. It's a corporatist fiasco. It really is. And that's one way they can also appeal more to libertarian voters. Libertarian voters tend to agree with Democrats on social issues, so they should continue to bring those up. I'm not asking Democrats to change on those, with the possible exception of gun rights. I think they need to be a bit more receptive and open to gun rights. I think it can help with libertarian voters also.
Okay.
And those are the ones that I think that Democrats should look at.
Greg, what do you think? What do you think Democrats are doing wrong or could do differently to draw in that extra 3% that we need to win a national race, or for that matter, local races?
No, he's right. We should be able to listen to newer ideas. And, we always talk about the progressives, but we're not going to give up on gun rights. We will never, especially every time there's a gun violence, we want to scale back. So there's something that DJ and I kind of disagree with. The tax issue is something that we keep going on. I think it's really a question of messaging. We're very bad, I think,
right.
at branding. I don't really think, and maybe it's because I've swallowed the Kool-Aid for too long, because I think we're great. I think we're amazing. And I just think, and every time I try to explain it, like, why doesn't everyone think we're great? I think we have a really hard time, and I think everyone can agree. Democrats' branding and messaging sucks.
And I was just going to say, just to lighten things up, what's kind of amazing? Greg made a reference to the fact that he's still drinking the Kool-Aid from his early days in politics. It's amazing that Kool-Aid is still a viable product in this country, because it's now 50 years since the Jonestown Massacre. And
40.
Okay, 40 years. Has any product ever gotten worse
40.
word of mouth than Kool-Aid did off of that one incident?
It's still delicious.
It still is. I probably would have gone back for seconds. I mean,
well, they should have embraced it. I mean, it covers the cyanide. So.
Yeah, it must have been pretty good.
I mean, the contracts they could have gotten in the Benelux countries with assisted suicide and such. Kool-Aid. What a way to go.
This is really dark.
Speaking of committing suicide, what happens if Justice Kennedy resigns or retires? Because a lot of Democrats are going to be reaching for the cyanide. I think the Kool-Aid is going to be selling off the shelves.
No.
I don't know about that one.
That was a hell of a transition.
I like that one.
I thought you were going to go right into healthcare with that one.
Yeah,
actually.
so did I.
No. This isn't Obamacare. We're not talking about death panels anymore.
Ooh. We're talking about death bills.
And now moving on to healthcare, which I guess is really the issue that everybody is thinking about, since the Senate is going to be apparently voting this week on the new AHCA bill, which just makes me want to slip my wrists. But what do you guys think is going to happen?
Man, this has been a dark podcast.
Well, the whole world makes me want to slip my wrists these days, Cliff, but in a fun way. So what do you guys think is in the cards? Do you believe that there are 5 to 7 or 9 senators that are going to vote against this thing?
You know what? I don't know. I hate this bill, honestly. I didn't think that they could come up with something worse than the ACA, but I think the Senate has really outdone themselves.
Interesting.
This, from an economic point of view, is just there is no bending of the cost curve. They are getting rid of some things that I frankly don't like, but that we have to have if we're not going to get rid of the pre-existing conditions. It just makes it, going to blow up faster, because you cannot get rid of the coverage mandate while keeping and retaining the pre-existing conditions exclusions. And it's just, it's a economically dreadful bill.
Okay, so I want to stop there and have you explain that, Molly, because you're an economist and you're a Republican and tend to be economically conservative. So explain why, because a lot of the GOP senators are saying this will bend the cost curve because the free market will give us more choices, which will create more competition. Why are they wrong?
They are wrong because it does not bring in nearly enough of the free market. They caved to pressure and retained a lot of things. And I think if you are going to, and the Medicaid expansion, I actually was relatively okay with. A lot of conservatives are not. That didn't bother me. But if you're going to get rid of the federal funds for Medicaid expansion, and we need to be clear about what that is, because really it's the federal government paying for the additional people that now qualify for Medicaid at I believe DJ is at 90% rate or is even 100%. I think it's 100% going down to 90%.
Something like that.
As opposed to 52% is actually what they usually pick up. But if we're going to throw these people off Medicaid, we have to have affordable insurance for them to be able to purchase. And we have not done enough to make it affordable in terms of deregulating it and letting them write policies across state lines, making it affordable for healthy people with the waivers, and by really, making sure that that the word gets out that if you choose not to carry and maintain insurance and then you do get sick, yes, you have to pay more, because if you can sign up for the insurance only after you get sick, it's not insurance.
Right.
It's not.
Right. Okay, Cliff, I'm curious, where do you fall on this particular bill?
I mean, Molly took a lot of my thunder. It's kind of hard to add.
Sorry.
No, it's kind of hard.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to add to what I say is a wonderful detailed analysis. As she said, the biggest problem I have is that with the whole healthcare issue is that neither party has really sought to address the underlying issues. And I forget whether it was Rebecca or DJ commented a few weeks back when we were talking about this last time that, the insurance companies don't want those policies going across state lines, et cetera, et cetera. I actually think, as hard as it would be for them to say, it's time for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party in their own ways and with their own solutions to turn around and say the medical industry, the healthcare industry, not the hospitals, not the doctors, the healthcare industry are the bad guys here, because they want they have captured a wonderful economic rent and they want to keep it. In a sense, Obamacare was a beautiful giveaway to them, because you've now basically turned to everybody and said, those guys who are in basically a collective racket and who have more or less a guaranteed profit margin because of how things are set up, you have to do business with them. You have to give them money. They have to be able to make money off of you by law. And that's a problem.
Essentially, the Patently Deficient and Unaffordably Careless Act was corporatized health insurance sold as socialized medicine. Cute disguise, but those of us who are versed in this subject know better. And once again, if you look at what the Senate what Mitch McConnell and crew have come up with, there is no discussion about getting states to move off of certificate of public need regimes. There's no discussion about loosening immigration visas for doctors and nurses coming in from abroad. There's no discussion of tort reform, which has been part of Republican healthcare reform for 25 years. There's no actual proposal to address the shortage in healthcare and to give the healthcare market the supply side reforms it desperately needs. This is essentially how best can we maintain the health insurance racket for the health insurance industry while at the same time gutting Medicaid. Now, I don't mind gutting Medicaid because, frankly, Medicaid is how we kill poor people quietly in this country. But Medicaid should be shifted from an income-based insurance system to a risk-based insurance system. It should be the health insurance version of the National Flood Insurance Program. Because, one, that would enable private insurance to focus on healthy patients and actually get premiums down. And two, it would get the government to say, okay, we're only going to cover the sick people or people who have particular conditions. We know we're going to pay through the nose for this unless we get the healthcare industry to innovate, get them to increase healthcare supply and lower prices. Right now, the government is acting too much like an insurance company because of Medicaid, and we as voters are acting too much like insurance company shareholders, and we're ignoring the rest of the problems in the healthcare market. And Mitch McConnell's bill actually makes all of that worse.
Yeah, and there's actually no mention of how to make it more transparent with pricing and do things to favor people shopping for buying their own routine medical care, not got hit by a bus or you have cancer or a heart attack or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I will say, by the way, I don't want the insurance companies to innovate, because the last time the financial industry decided it wanted to innovate, we got mortgage-backed securities out of the deal. That being
now, hang on. I will spend an entire podcast defending mortgage-backed securities. However,
but it won't be this one. It won't be this one.
I was referring to healthcare providers, not health insurers, about innovation.
Right.
Fair enough.
Right.
I agree with innovation by healthcare providers, many of whom just don't want to deal, if they can get away with it, with insurance companies because it's such a morass.
Okay, so let me ask this. It's interesting that, I mean, Greg hasn't really spoken up on it, but I think I could safely assume that you're not in favor of this bill.
Well, I haven't spoken up because mostly all I have is 4-letter words about this bill. Because it's heartless, it's terrible. I mean, and everything that you guys have said is pretty much. But the worst part is it's taking away things that people already have, and not. I mean, you can't do that as a government. You can't give something and then take it away. I mean,
there are provisions grandfathering in those who do already qualify. I did read that. So.
Okay, so let me ask you guys this. Okay, we have 5 people here across a broad political spectrum. We're all against the bill, and yet we know that there is a chance that Mitch McConnell at the last minute will somehow miraculously pull 50 votes out, plus Mike Pence's 51, and this thing could pass. But no one in the media that I've seen yet has talked about what happens next, because these 2 bills, the House bill and the Senate bill, if it passes, then have to go to conference, and then whatever comes out of conference has to be voted on again. This thing just squeaked by in the House the last time. If they make it much more liberal, they're going to lose some of those Freedom Caucus conservatives, aren't they?
My thinking there, I actually think this is a very canny trick on the part of the Republicans in that, yes, these are 2 bad bills. You get 2 bad bills, but both the House and the Senate can say they passed a bill. The fact that they weren't able to pass the same bill, they can turn around to the voters and they can say, hey, we passed the bill. It was those schmucks in the other chamber that screwed it up. They have,
That's a great message for 2018.
Not for anything, but not for anything. The fact of the matter is the Congress literally threw a party when they passed the bill. And they had a celebration, and half of my friends think Obamacare is dead because of the press conference and the party on the Rose. And they were like, "Oh, well, it's dead now." And I said, "No, there was more of a process." And now the Senate's going to throw a party when this one passes, and I'm going to have to say, "No, there's actually a process."
Right. So that's my point. Is that if this thing does pass before the July 4th recess, and the Senate and the Congress go back to their town halls, Greg is right. A lot of people are going to see on the news, hey, the Senate passed a health care bill, Obamacare is dead, not realizing that there's a whole other step to the process that's going to happen, and both houses are going to have to vote again before it even gets to Trump's desk.
Well, yes,
but they can claim a victory.
Well, that is what say they can claim a victory, and then you've got a lot of people who are going to see each chamber did what they said they were going to do, the fact that nothing actually changed that they can be properly blamed for. Basically, in a sense, they're getting away with murder here because they will have both been able to say they successfully voted to repeal Obamacare without actually having to deal with any political consequences of those votes having been enacted.
So what you're saying is this is the Republican death panel.
No, what I think it is, this is essentially
they're getting away with murder.
This is essentially, yeah. I wouldn't have used that term. I would have preferred bait and switch, because what they want to do, they want to be able to say in their campaign literature, "I voted for X, which repealed Obamacare." Never mind that neither the House bill nor the Senate bill actually did repeal Obamacare. It was both bills are much closer to rinse and repeat than repeal and replace. But that doesn't matter. They're essentially hoping, as the Republican Party, frankly, has been hoping for 15 years here in Virginia and God knows how long in other states, they're hoping that their voters are a bunch of ignorant rubes who don't understand the way anything actually works.
Well, and the evidence of that is how people lauded the ACA, which is is imploding. And I don't want to hear that it's imploding because of the uncertainty created by the Republicans now. No, that's a load of crap.
I'm pretty sure it's imploding because of the Republicans now.
No, it's not.
I'm certain of it.
No, it is not, because those pullouts from the states started before Trump was even elected.
Okay, well, but again, let's stay on. Molly, I was just
we were just
we knew you were going to go there, but
they were messing with you, Molly.
I want to keep focused on this topic because I think it's really interesting that no one in the media is talking about this. You guys have said, and probably rightfully, that these senators could kind of take a slow run around the bases, tipping their hat and saying, I voted to repeal Obamacare. But it's going to become very painfully obvious in September and October that Obamacare is still the law of the land, even if this bill passes the Senate.
It's going to become very painfully obvious when open enrollment opens and some people don't have any health insurance to choose from, and other people face another 22% rate hike with a correspondent large hike in their deductibles.
Okay, and what are the Republicans going to say at that point? They're the ones that are now in control of the process.
We tried, but what can you do?
Yeah,
And
well,
we
what are
got
they
the
going to do?
Freedom
Blame the
Caucus.
Democrats because they didn't help push this over the goal line?
It depends on where they are. It's either we tried and it's the Democrats' fault because there's too many of them to stop a filibuster, or it's we tried but it's Rand Paul's fault because he wouldn't support it. Because Rand Paul is definitely a no vote, by the way. He is an absolute certain no on this. It is basically the tradition, and the reason why I'm jumping in on this is because Cliff and I have seen this in Virginia for 15 years, where Republicans basically throw bait and switches and various snake oil games. They either blame the Democrats or they blame quote unquote extremists in their own party unquote for excuses for why they did their best but they couldn't do what they said they were going to do. And unfortunately, what I am seeing out of Washington is that Virginia model is now going nationwide. On the plus side, it has led to the Republicans losing just about every statewide office in the Commonwealth over the last 3 to 4 years. So if voters in the rest of the country are as smart as they are in Virginia, the Republicans will fall flat on their faces. But that's what they're going to try in 2017, 2018. We tried, but either it's the Democrats' fault or it's the conservatives' fault.
If
Because
this is what they
honestly,
came up with after 7 years, then they really didn't try, and I'm really angry about it.
They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't. They didn't try because they didn't care.
Okay, so let's do this. I think we've covered all of the really important topics that we had on the agenda. But in the spirit of bipartisanship, I like to always try to end the show on something that we can all agree on. So can we all talk about how it's going to be fun to see Jane Sanders and her husband Bernie squirm through her legal problems in the next couple of months? Am I the only one that's enjoying this immensely?
Well, I was enjoying it a lot more when I misread the headline as Jane Fonda.
No, I think this is a great expose of the link between big government and in academia, big academia, and
because she was the president of a college in Burlington, Vermont, and she has been accused. Has she been charged yet, or just accused of potential fraud?
Accused.
Because of a loan that the college was seeking, and she apparently may have misstated some financial facts about the college. Is that right?
That's pretty close to it.
she inflated about $2 million in donor pledges that apparently were not true in order to secure the loan, reportedly.
Now, to be fair, considering how much the Democrats love inflation, she probably didn't think that was an actual crime.
But she's not a Democrat.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say. So does this impact the 2020 election? Could this be a monkey wrench in Bernie's plans for a possible second run?
He's not going to run. Well, he'll be the Ralph Nader. He is the Ralph Nader as is. But I mean, he'll be 70? He'll be 80, won't he?
He'll be like 79.
79 or
Yeah.
80.
He'll be 79 or 80.
He won't be 80. He won't be 80. He'll be like 78 or 79.
Okay.
And Trump will be like 74 or 75. There'll be a difference of 4 or 5 years between them.
Oh my gosh. My father is 74, I believe, and I don't even like him having the remote control. I mean,
I remember a few months ago, I think it was the last podcast I did when I was sober, which is why I don't ever do that again. I actually mentioned that Bernie Sanders, to some extent, has to bear in mind that he is up for re-election next year, and the rest of you all just piled on and said, oh, please, he's an obvious shoo-in. This is the kind of thing that does not make an incumbent senator an obvious shoo-in anymore. As bizarre as it sounds, the Republican Party is not actually dead in Vermont. They actually elected a governor in 2016 while all the crazy other nonsense was going on. It is quite possible that if if there is fire under this smoke that surrounds Mrs. Sanders, and I've seen reports somewhere that said Mr. Sanders might have leaned on whatever agency or whatever bank was loaning the college this money. It is quite possible that one, the Republicans in Vermont think they can make some headway, and two, some very angry Clintonian Democrats could say, you know what, Bernie Sanders will run assuming Bernie Sanders runs as an independent again, which is a fancy way of pretending he's not a socialist. The Clintonian Democrats, if they have enough control of the Vermont Democratic Party, may run their own candidate to split the center-left vote and let a Republican senator sneak in if they presume the Senate is beyond their grasp and they really want to retire Bernie Sanders. I refuse to rule any of that out.
Okay, I want to jump in here and just say, so we have now come full circle because DJ, who started this podcast by saying the Democrats wasted $30 million trying to win a race that was unwinnable in the South.
That was Cliff. That was not me.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, it was Cliff.
Me.
But we're now advocating that Republicans try to spend money to unseat Bernie Sanders in Vermont, which is pretty much the polar opposite. The mirror image.
No, it's worse than that. He said Democrats are going to spend money so that the Republicans can win that seat away from.
No. But the idea is that Bernie Sanders is somehow vulnerable in Vermont, which I think is silly. But then again, I've been wrong before too.
I've been wrong almost as often as DJ has been wrong, but literally. Bernie Sanders could go out and strangle someone in a quart of Ben and Jerry's
and still get reelected. And they could name the Ben and Jerry's Bernie Sanders dead corpse ice cream. And he'd be elected by a landslide because they'd be like, how crunchy is this? Well, in this podcast, we've covered a couple of different versions of suicide, drinking arsenic-laced Kool-Aid, and now talking about Bernie Sanders killing people by drowning them in Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So I think we've covered.
This was a killer podcast.
This has arguably
Kevin.
been our most violent podcast ever.
Game over.
We need more of the women next week.
Absolutely. So with that, we want to thank everyone for listening. Please join us or follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/moreperfectunionpodcast/wrists. And share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And if you love political debating and want to try to take us on or take on other people who are well-informed and love to argue, please look for our affiliated Facebook debate group, Open Fire Politics. It's not part of More Perfect Union, but we're all there, and we'd love to see you there too. And you can come and debate with us and tell us your favorite way for offing yourself. And with that, we want to say thank you for tuning in. Greg, what's the last word of the day?
We do not mind you recording any of this as long as it's much better than the White House briefings. We're fine with that.
Yes, no pictures.